Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to talk about binge eating and how it's not actually an issue when it comes to willpower or discipline, but it's actually a very predictable cycle. So if you're somebody that beats good all week and feels like they're on top of the world, and then one meal, one evening, one bad night seems to throw all of that out the window and you feel like you have a complete loss of control, this video is for you. Like I said, binge eating is not a willpower issue. And once you start to understand the cycle that's causing it, everything will start to make sense. Most women that come to work with us and maybe struggle with binge eating often think that they just love food too much, they have no willpower, or they have no control and they're too weak. But actually, most women that I work with don't binge because they enjoy food too much. They binge because they're restricting the foods that they enjoy. Binge eating can come in a number of forms, and sometimes it's caused by simple things like chronic restriction, setting your calories too low, telling yourself you're not allowed certain foods, or only focusing on eating good foods and not allowing yourself any foods that you would consider to be bad. And of course, trying to eat as little as possible for fat loss. But your body is not going to recognize that as a way to lose weight. It's going to recognize that as danger. Your body no longer feels safe. Another reason for binge eating might simply be mental deprivation. You constantly telling yourself, I'll start again Monday, or I just can't stay on track. I'm so good Monday to Friday, and the weekends I just hit the F it button. Your mind is going to be exhausted and you are putting yourself in that diet culture mindset where you're going to keep repeating the same cycle because you have convinced yourself that it's working or it's not working. And of course, emotional regulation, stress, boredom, loneliness, any negative emotion can lead to us binge eating and looking at food as a way of comfort. But what you actually need to recognize is that food doesn't bring us that comfort. When we're stressed, overwhelmed, bored, or lonely, our body is craving the serotonin and dopamine hormone. We want to feel happy, we want to feel safe, we want to feel at peace. That is what it's looking for. And for a lot of us, we think that food is going to bring that happiness to us. But in all reality, you know that as soon as you turn to food for comfort, you're going to feel 10 times worse once the guilt kicks in because you've overate and you still haven't solved the issue that's underlying. But the main thing to remember here is that you're not weak. It's just what you're used to. It's what you've been doing your whole life. That's not going to change overnight. Binge eating takes weeks, months, or years to overcome. But understanding this one cycle could definitely be the kickstart that you need to start overcoming these habits. Now, here's where binge eating should start to make sense to you. It is not random. It follows a very predictable cycle. And this is known as the restrict, crave, and binge cycle. Because one of these things will always lead into the other. That's why it's so important that we learn to take at least one of these aspects away to help you overcome your binge eating. So first one, restriction. It may look like cutting calories too low, eating too little in general, cutting out your favorite foods, only eating foods that are considered healthy. That is a form of restriction because you're depriving yourselves of who you truly are, and you're depriving yourself of the foods that you truly enjoy and that make you happy. And restriction doesn't only make you hungry, it makes that food noise a lot louder in your head, which will then lead to you craving these foods. And then of course the cravings kick in. All those things that you restricted yourself from, all your favorite foods, all of those foods you told yourself you're not allowed are going to be the only thing that are on your mind. It becomes like the forbidden fruit. You start to think about the foods that you are not allowed and you want them more and more and more, which eventually then leads to a binge. And your body starts to fight back. And this is where we feel like we lose all the willpower, all the control that we have, and we end up going completely overboard. We eat way past the point of fullness. We finish food that we don't even want, and we eat for the sake of eating rather because our body is actually telling us that it's hungry. We completely start to neglect our hunger cues and our body's cues and just ignore all of that because all we see is red flashing warning signs to eat as much as possible in that particular moment. But the worst part about getting to this point is the guilt that comes with it. You start to feel guilty, you start to feel super low in yourself, your mood drops, you feel like you have no willpower, you have no self-belief left in yourself. You tell yourself, I can't stick to anything. And then that guilt eats and eats and eats at you until you reach that point of restriction again. You're telling yourself, I just have to cut everything out, I need to stop altogether, I'm not eating out, I'm not eating those foods I enjoy, I don't deserve to feel good around food. You tell yourself all those things and then you go back to the first stage of the cycle. But the issue is when we're feeling that guilt and we think about restriction, we look at it as something that we need and something that's going to help us. But what we don't recognize is that we're actually just restarting that cycle again to end up back at the binge. So when we actually break this down, the binge eating or the binge was never the issue. The issue started with the restriction. And most women will just start telling themselves, I just need to be more disciplined, I need more willpower. But the truth is if willpower was all that it took to avoid binge eating, nobody would binge eat, because we all have that self-belief and that willpower within us. It is just deeper rooted for some of us than others. So let's find actual solutions and let's find what will actually work and break the cycle for good. So the first thing we want to focus on is consistency. And the next thing we want to focus on is safety. And all of that comes together by trust. So let's break this down. Why do we want consistency to help us overcome our binge eating patterns? Because by eating consistently, eating regularly throughout the day, not cutting out our favourite foods and not actually restricting ourselves in any way will help us break that cycle. And it will take us away from the very first initial part of the cycle, which is restriction. We want to make sure that we're eating enough and satisfying our hunger and satisfying our minds and our bodies throughout the day, every single day. This avoids the cravings from rising and that binge from happening down the line. The next one is safety. You want to feel safe around food. One of the most important relationships you will ever have is your relationship with food. Food is social, food is exciting, food is something you should look forward to, food is something you should be excited about. So you want to feel safe in that environment. You don't want to view food as something that's bad for us or something that we shouldn't do or something we should feel guilt around, right? We want to feel good around it. So we stop punishing ourselves for having something that maybe wouldn't be considered as the healthiest choice. But what we do is get back into rhythm and routine after. And the final thing is trust. And this can be trust around food or trust in yourself. Believe in yourself enough that binge eating doesn't have to define you or how you show up. Trust is the most important part of breaking that cycle. And the reason being behind that is because you need to trust yourself enough to be able to overcome that. Because like I said earlier, you are going to have hiccups. That's part and parcel of the journey. Binge eating doesn't go away overnight. It takes weeks, months, or even years for some people to overcome. But every single time you're getting ready to binge, you will become more aware. And you need to trust that feeling and trust yourself that every single time the frequency of your binges are going to be reducing. And if the frequency is reducing, you are progressing, even if you haven't fully stopped it. I've had so many girls join my team and tell me that they struggle with binge eating and it's something they didn't feel like they could overcome. But by simply visiting those different triggers, whether it was restriction, calories, not eating enough, or building a better routine and structure around their day to day, sometimes it was simply becoming more aware of the triggers that were causing their binge eating, whether that was emotional, whether it was particular foods. Recognizing all of those things helped them overcome binge eating without feeling like they were losing all of that control, because that's where it came from initially. You want to control everything that you're doing. That's where the restriction comes from, right? But once you let go of that control and you actually allow yourself to be present and understand everything, the cycle will break. And no, none of my girls overcame binge eating by working harder or trying harder or simply signing up to a program. That wasn't the case at all. They overcame it by working on their mindset, improving their relationship with food, and letting go of that control and understanding that it's a cycle and cycles can be broken. So for anybody that is struggling with this, I really hope you understand the cycle and that you take something away from it. I will also be doing a part 2 on the binge eating series, because now that we've covered the cycle, we want to be covering the triggers as well, because there are different triggers for binge eating and they look different on absolutely everybody. And once you become more aware of your triggers, you can actually manage them a lot better. Like I said, binge eating doesn't go away overnight, but it is something that can be managed, it can be improved, and you can overcome. And you're not weak, you're not lacking willpower. We just need to dive that little bit deeper and recognize where you're getting stuck in that cycle and how we can break it. And if you've made it this far to the video and you are somebody that's stuck in the cycle and just really struggling to overcome it, I will leave my coaching info below. You can reach out and we can have a chat. My background in coaching is relationship with food, which includes everything: restriction, binge eating, and all of the above. I've done it all. I've learned from my mistakes and I want to help you overcome that as well. There's no pressure, but if you are feeling stuck and you just need that little bit more support or somebody else's perspective and opinion, I'm here to listen. Anyways, thank you so much for joining today. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment below if this made sense to you and if it made things a little bit clearer for you, and I will catch up with you all later on in the week. Bye.